Last time, the V8 Speed Resto Shop team installed some new floors and a complete RideTech street grip suspension system in our '79 Trans Am project to prepare it for a huge horsepower upgrade in the form of a LS3 V8 from Chevrolet Performance.
And a lot of times it's sacrilege to put an LS engine in a Pontiac. But again, this car didn't come with a Pontiac engine, and there's a lot of them out there, and there's a lot of options to get that engine and transmission in the car with some ready-made parts. And the attraction for the LS platform is that they do make a ridiculous amount of power as compared to the earlier engines. They start and run reliably with modern fuel injection. The design of the engine is very, very strong, so you can drive them real hard and not worry about breaking them. Their modern design eliminates a lot of the leak points that were kind of common to older V8s. And in this case, our customer was targeting about 500 horsepower, right? So to build that Olds 403 to be 2.5 times more powerful than it was new would take quite a lot of work, parts, machine work, custom work, and at the end of the day, you'd still have that Oldsmobile 403 engine architecture, which again, is prone to leaks and older technology. So by going with an LS engine, the one that he chose is called the LS3, and it's rated at 480 horsepower from General Motors. The fun thing is that of all the LSs we've ever done, they've always made more power than the rating, so this is going to be right around 500, I'm guessing. And it comes with a 2-year, 24,000 mile warranty. And in our case, a nice benefit for the customer is that if he purchased this engine on his own and shipped it to us, the warranty would start the day he bought it. But working with our shop, because of our relationship with General Motors, we're a warranty shop, so that warranty doesn't start until the day he takes the car home. So however long it takes us to build the car, the warranty clock does not tick until the car leaves the shop, and then it's the full 2-year, 24,000 mile warranty. But one thing we did not want to do was just another cookie cutter LS swap where you open the hood and it looks like, you know, an 02 Camaro or something with wires all over the place and that ugly intake manifold. So in an attempt to make this conversion look a little more organic, we're going to do a few tricks to personalize the LS3 to be more of a Pontiac-esque engine. The LS3 is an aluminum block V8, aluminum cylinder heads. It's got a lot of plastic on it, and the aluminum tends to corrode very quickly on these engines. We didn't want this thing to end up looking like a dingy junkyard takeout engine because it was brand new. You know, we wanted it to stay looking new. So we disassembled part of the engine and masked everything off and cleaned it and prepped it, and we painted it using some Eastwood ceramic high-temp engine paint in a Pontiac V8 engine color. Now everybody knows this isn't a Pontiac V8, but at least the color pays homage to the original Pontiac 400s. The Oldsmobiles were actually a different color blue, but we thought the Pontiac V8 blue would be a nice touch. So once the engine came out of the paint booth, we started putting it all back together. It looked really nice, and when our metal modifications were done to the car, everything was ready to rock and roll.
So the crate motor comes with a production oil pan, which I believe is for the Chevy SS sedan, which doesn't fit very well in a lot of these old cars. So we took that pan off and we replaced it with the Holley LS conversion oil pan, which works really well in this application because it works with their mounts for the engine and the transmission, so there's no fitment issues. So the transmission for this project was a GM Performance crate transmission. It's a 4L70E, which is already designed to work behind LS motors because it was basically an upgraded 4L60 that was put in trucks mainly. So the transmission doesn't come with a torque converter. GM lists recommended torque converters to go with particular crate engines or horsepower levels. So we use the GM Performance torque converter that they recommended, along with the Holley LS swap crossmember, which is designed for a 4L60 series transmission, which this transmission is a relative of. And then we use the ShiftWorks kit, which modifies the stock shifter to look correctly but have an extra position for an overdrive gear. So GM ECM out of the box will run this engine, but it does not run the transmission. In OE applications, transmissions run on a different controller, and the transmissions were typically 6 or 8 speeds by the time the LS3 was around. So you have to buy a separate controller from GM, which then you have to manually program, which works pretty much the same way as the Holley system. You pick shift points versus engine RPM and or speed. So we chose the Holley Dominator because it's one box that's fully programmable to do whatever you want and does drive-by-wire and electronic transmission. For LS swaps, Holley has a pre-terminated harness, so it just lays on the engine transmission, plugs in, and then it's basically up to you to route the trunk of it and mount the ECM. In order to keep the engine bay clean, we mounted it up in the fender between the wheel well and the fender, and then ran the wires neatly along the seam at the bottom of the firewall. The Dominator, like all the aftermarket EFI systems, are, quote, self-tuning. What that means is that it only tunes the base fuel map. It doesn't do all the rest of it. It doesn't do timing, doesn't do your starting, doesn't necessarily do power enrichment, doesn't do your transmission tune. But it does what's typically the most time-consuming, is filling in the cells on the VE map, which is basically engine RPM versus load. So you get it close from a base tune or a tune from a similar engine, and then you set your fuel targets and drive it, and then it figures out most of the tune work for you. It's just the details that kind of get left to the person tuning it. So this car, we've done a lot of LS3 480 horse engines. So we actually took the last tune out of a similar car we'd done a couple years ago. So the tune was pretty close to start with. For the cooling system, we used the Holley Frostbite kit for the car, which is a radiator module and fans that just bolts into the stock location. We went up to the parts store and found radiator hoses that looked like they would fit based on bends and diameter. So again, they're regular service parts. If the car ever needs a hose, it's not anything special. The owner can run up to the parts store, get a hose and replace it. As far as driving manners, the 480 is a really nice engine because it's basically a stock LS3 with a mild cam in it. So it's just enough cam that at idle it doesn't sound stock. Bumps the horsepower up about 50 horses. But it doesn't kill your vacuum, so you can still use vacuum brakes. You can still have air conditioning without having to crank the idle RPM way up, which this car we use the Holley accessory drive kit and the R4 compressor, which is similar to the R4 compressor that this car originally came with. So the aftermarket parts work well with the stock AC system.
After the V8 team finalized the Holley Dominator EFI system, they used a new solid-state relay from MSD to control the AC system.
Solid state means is that it has no moving parts in it. A typical relay has a coil and a little lever, and when you apply power to the coil, it pulls the lever over, and that completes the circuit or disconnects the circuit. Solid state means that none of that happens. There's basically a circuit board that accomplishes the same task. The theory is that it lasts indefinitely and can carry more load and doesn't get as hot. It's going to be running our fans and the AC compressor. And the reason we chose to do the AC compressor as well is because our R4 compressor isn't really meant to spin as fast as the motor can, so it's to protect it. And we'll be able to do that with the Holley system, have a whole bunch of conditions that allow AC to run or not. So throttle position, RPM, engine temperature, basically whatever we want, so that AC can be prohibited under certain circumstances. So as far as how this works, see all these screws in here, and I got some wires already in. The big one in the middle, that's your battery power input for all your loads. I got two fans, got an AC compressor, and a fourth one that we're not using in this case, but could be used for another load. Over here, this little wire, that's our ground. If you've ever used a regular style relay, you got to have some way to ground one side of the coil if you're triggering it with power. If you're triggering with a ground, that already pulls off of the battery. And then the best part about this is it can trigger either way. So the top row of trigger wires is a power trigger, and the bottom row of trigger wires is a ground trigger. So depending on outputs from your ECM, which way they're polarized, or what type of switch you got, or something else trying to control this, it's very versatile, work either way. As far as mounting, they give you these two little things that actually slide on here, so you can mount it 3 different positions on a flat surface. And they give you some nice screws. In this case, we're going to mount it up under here, right above the coolant overflow. One of the things when you're doing an LS swap that you got to consider is your fuel system. In our 79 Trans Am, we're using a Tanks Inc. Fuel injection fuel tank. The reason we like this is because it's got a drop-in fuel pump module, which is similar to how new cars are designed. This is important because fuel injection pumps are designed to push, not to pull. So having the pump as close to fuel as possible makes the pump last longer. It also helps keep the pump cool because heat is what really kills the pumps. We like these because they're cost effective, they're well thought out, there's multiple fuel pump options for different horsepower applications, and they look stock. Additionally, if you don't need to replace your tank, there's options to have just a drop-in module that goes right in your factory sender. But in this case, tank kind of needed replaced because of rust issues, so we just went ahead with a replacement tank and the in-tank pump module kit.
The Trans Am transformation is nearly complete, but the V8 crew has a few more steps before turning the key on the LS3. Next time, they fab up a functional shaker scoop intake system to let the LS3 scream to life.